And welcome back. It is 21 and a tush, 21 and a half minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock. And we want to talk about the state of our nation, well, the mental state. And for that, we have Dr. Keith Lequay, past president, and Anna Maria Mora, president of the TNT Association of Psychologists. Or am I mistaken in saying that we have two past presidents?
Yes.
Yes, man, because I know saying, but where does Katisha can fit into this?
Right, thank
All
you.
right. It's nice when you have a little inside different from what is typed. Yes. But at the same time, good morning. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you for having us.
And actually staying on. How did the traffic treat with you this morning?
No, it wasn't good. For me, it wasn't. For him, I guess it was. He's in Mora.
Yes, so
I came from Aruca. It was, and I thought I left home I left home just after 5, and it was like, oh my goodness.
Part of the stressor, one of the major stressors in Trinidad and Tobago.
So let me ask, what are some of the other stressors, some of the other factors that we need to think about when thinking about what goes into stressing us as a people?
The traffic, the fact that, I see very young children very early in the morning in schoolyards, like 6 o'clock. What time did they have to leave home to get to school? And and this goes right through until CXC. Some children end up burning out and not being able to function, their grades, and then parents are down on them. And the thing too about psychologists, people in mental health, and our citizenry not giving us any kind of credence. It's like we are there, and people do not understand what we do, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's we have colleagues who have been in the vineyard laboring with the communities and individuals for 25 to 30 years. And of course, there's the whole stigma around mental health and anything to do with the mind. We can run to a dentist, any other kind of doctor and so on, but when it comes to the software that drives everything else, right, which is the psyche and the mind, we shy from that. And so, my clinical colleagues talk about people who pass them straight in the street or cross the road or park around the corner from the offices if they're seeking therapy, etc., etc. And it's a Caribbean problem. It's probably more than just a Caribbean problem, but we could speak about. So we have this attitude and prejudice and stigma around mental health, and it's not doing us any good because we're not looking in the mirror and dealing with reality. And so we continue on this slippery slope in terms of the stressors that we started off with. I had the experience stuck in traffic yesterday in Barataria and watching a he couldn't be more than, he isn't 4 feet tall, high school boy walking across 6th Avenue with this big school bag on his shoulder. The bag was half his size. And as Anna said, if we this is how we're treating our children. And you see them all around with their bags. Scoliosis and all the different health problems and back problems they're gonna. We need to stop and check ourselves in terms of what we're doing and the kind of citizens we're creating.
I'm not sure because I knew in my time we had a timetable, so you bring the books for that day to school, and you had some manageable books, but now I'm not sure if it is. Why teach? What is the reason for children being asked to bring all their books to school every day? I'm not sure if that is what it is, but children's bags and they're making these backpacks bigger. Now they put wheels on them.
Yeah, some of them drag it along like a bag or a travel bag.
Yes, and our sidewalks not the smoothest. So those wheels go very quickly, and it's either you lift it up now because they also have the little shoulder straps plus the wheels, and we are not. To me, caring enough to want to put things in place to help our children. And as I think Miss Wall said in this article, that it's not only now we have to think about, we have to think about the generations to come. And in the 70s, we would have talked about thinking about the generations to come. And this is the generation here now.
I like the fact that you're speaking about generations and you're actually traversing timelines. And I want to go back a little bit and ask about the difference that having stay-at-home parents, having aunties, uncles, grannies, people in the society that we could trust on a greater level. What did that do with regard to the caring aspect that you're talking about?
I didn't have stay-at-home parents when I was younger. Young. My dad worked. My mom, she was a teacher. And the issue for me was that she taught in the school next door to where I went. And when she moved for a year, she took me with her. But I also had an aunt who taught at the school that I went to as a primary person. And all our teachers lived in the neighborhood. So they knew me from baby because they were my mom. So if it wasn't Miss DJ, it was Miss this one going up. And so you're getting tapped right through. You understand? Because everybody knows you. And they taught in the school.
The community
and
raised
the community
child.
raised the child.
That's part of what I'm speaking as well.
Yeah.
So not necessarily even having to have someone, you have your child by someone, as opposed to this person has vested interest in your growth and development. And Joseph Remy, he always says that houses and areas, you cannot equate them to homes and communities. There's a distinct and a profound difference. So you see that what you're talking about, I have the same experience in terms of going to school in Gasparilla. Actually, there was a teacher, our next door neighbor. I still call the husband Uncle Joe, or the wife is Mrs. Lewis, because she was in school. I get licks from her and stuff as well. And anybody, they might give me the tap and thing right there, but they go in and tell Mr. Simon or Miss Margaret.
Right.
So it's not as though you could do something and hide and come, because everybody, you have a responsibility, and it's not just you're a community member, you're also so-and-so's son, and you need to kind of protect that name.
For me, one thing that didn't work was the corporal punishment. I mean, people say, look at you, you're doing well. But listen to me, I knew that corporal punishment made me very, very, shy, insecure, not understanding who I was, or until I started. I'm a late developer. I call myself a late developer. Because I tell my parents who I work with now, if I knew I had the power to do what I was doing, what I'm doing now when I was like 17, 18, 20, 21, I would have been, so for me, further. I'm not sure. Well, people say, wait, you want to go again. But that really, like when I work with my young people, 20, 21, you head out there, go out there and get get out into the world and understand what needs, what you need to do, and then you could come back and make a contribution to Trinidad and Tobago. And you're still fairly young, and you could do that,
Yeah, behavior is contextual, and I think this is one of the things that we don't want to face. Behavior is based on your environment and your socialization. And we were just talking about the community raising the child. And of course, we are a lot more sophisticated, transport, people move around, they're in transition. We have lost that sense of community. And even people in the community who are their generations and see the neighborhood change and so on, in the climate that we have now, nobody interfering and disciplining nobody else's child. Because we know what the child may or may not do. They're threatening teachers in school or beating them, etc., etc. So the boundaries have disappeared, and we have socialized our children like this. They may not be the majority, they may be the outliers, right? But we have to take responsibility. So we, as I said this morning on another program, we are reaping what we have sown. We have planted seeds. My friend here can talk about her her experience in the education system as a counselor, school counselor 30 years ago, and saying the same thing over and over and over, and writing the same articles. The times have changed, the ministers of education have changed, etc., etc. We're having the same conversations.
And with regard to the conversations and the context, you said it's contextual.
Yeah.
Learning styles differ. You just spoke about corporal punishment stunting your growth and not liberating you to be what you can be.
Right, yeah.
Some people are a lot less outgoing than others. So people don't necessarily realize all that they're thinking about, all that they have inside, all that they're trying to express, manifest. What are some of the things that you see the society a little more geared towards in the sense that this person is an extrovert, this person is an introvert? What kind of differences do you see?
We are unique human beings. That's exactly, the point. We are unique human beings. There's nobody that is going to walk the face of the earth like us again. Right? I mean, we talk about parallel universes now in science and whatever. But, and so we need to understand that there's no template. And unfortunately, the education system, most of it, and many organized systems, are based on templates, on a norm. And so it does not cater to the outliers, those who want to be artists or panists or whatever, carnival costume makers, etc., as well as intellectuals and all the professional classes, etc. And this is what we need to be, but of course doing in terms of our children, but the system doesn't cater to them and their individual unique needs. And that is really where that is the foundation, because the teachers are stressed and they're trying to cope with the day and the curriculum and the exam demands, etc. It is systemic. And unless we deal with the system in which we operate and organizing the system to get the end result of hopefully better citizens, human beings who we are proud to call Trinidadians and Tobagonians, right, who care about each other and empathetic and don't engage in all the abusive, toxic behaviors that we are experiencing, the abuse, whether it's gender-based violence, etc., or abuse of drugs, etc., we will continue getting what we're getting.
I mean, the whole thing about the revision, reviewing, the changing of the way we teach our children, and we it is just amazing that we are calling for guns, people to walk with guns. We want to give citizens, open up so as many citizens as possible could get guns. We put guns in the schools, we have policemen, and we're not thinking of developing a culture of peace. Okay, there are countries that have changed their curriculum, the way they teach, with this as a foundation, a culture of peace. We are developing a culture of violence. We'll be looking at guns and in our schools, guns and hooking up children and looking at them as potential criminals because we put in guns in their faces.
Yeah, a lot of people claim that Trinidad and Tobago turned the corner after 1990. Because we had the joint patrols on Frederick Street, police army, SLRs, SMGs, etc., etc. And I've always been fascinated about that knee-jerk reaction because it is very superficial, it is impractical. You have, it's PR. So you have military and police walking around, big guns, etc., post-1990, but it doesn't solve the problem. Because if someone, for example, were to have an incident in the middle of Frederick Street, right? Do we expect that these heavily loaded paramilitary and military people to react in the middle of the city with these big guns? And we have since then, of course, standardized police with submachine guns. They're in the mall, they're on the corners, etc. So as Anna was saying, the state has escalated the level of violence just by the reaction, by putting guns on the street as a reaction to, let's say, 1970, if you want to start there. All right? And so the state has a responsibility because it has the resources, because it sets priorities, its policy, etc., to de-escalate violence. And one of the ways you do that is by removing these weapons and so on. But we are a long way from that. And it's really, really knee-jerk. And we need to think more deeply and talk to the people who understand human behavior. It's interesting that in this conversation that we have ongoing, that we don't hear from the sociologists and the anthropologists and the psychologists and the social workers. I guess they've given up or stepped aside and in frustration, etc.
But how do we do that? And I ask that question because I know that there are people who are doing work.
Yes.
Hal Graves, Citizen Security Program. There are people who are in the fields, in the trenches, doing work. But in terms of uniting or having conversations that break silos and say, okay, well, this is working here, this is working there. On the 11th of December, there was a conversation at the Lloyd Best Institute following the tragic murder of Shannon Banfield. And you found people coming, and I actually appreciated the fact that we didn't necessarily hear that much about it, or we heard that it was happening, but it wasn't live streamed, things weren't tweeted, because there's a saying that power develops with cooperation and silence. So as opposed to having stuff while people are trying to process and going through things, the information wasn't going out like that.
Yeah.
So people are able to kind of group and say, okay, well, this is where I work. This is my community. This is what is working. These are some of the challenges that we have. And somebody else can say, okay, well, I've dealt with some of those challenges. This might work for you. How do we do that on a broader level?
You see, I think there has to be some guidelines from the let's say powers that be. We have universal principles, okay, of honesty, respect for authority, respect for life. We have those basic universal guidelines because we are human beings. Everybody has a right to be walking this earth just as you and I have. And our children need to understand that they have a right to education, they have a right to information. We have, each one of us is born with an power to think for ourselves and the power to choose our good. We are not animals. We are basically mammals, yes, but we were created with these two characteristics that make us really powerful people, the power to think and the power to choose our good. And we have to begin there with our children. And people want to think for us and tell us how, what, why, when, and where. Okay, yes, we are born into a way of life. Okay, we are born into a home that says, this is how we do things. This is not how we do things. And in that culture into which we are born, our sense of what we need to do to create order is nurtured. That is culture. We say nurtures conscience, our sense of order. And our education system must fall into that. You know, everybody must be saying the same thing in Trinidad and Tobago. The patriotism, our system must be that I am a Trinidadian, I am a Trinbagonian, and these are things that we need to do to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago moves in a certain, my home moves in a certain direction. Because you have generations of people living in the same, top of your house, that breaking down. When you look in the papers and see some of the problems and the issues, when you check the structure in which these people live, what is going on? They talk about the fact that many children in rural communities might be talented, but they don't have the exposure, they don't know, and they're living at a certain level that isn't going to provide them with success.
What is the role of, well, I'd say the church, but other social institutions, because I will say that there are many things that I was exposed to because I was a part of church. So they had me do this, reading, actually sing a psalm, or there's another grouping where you were able to do this. It might be a prayer group, it might be a social group, it might be a sporting institution where you have community, and I say community elders, not olders, because not everybody who older is an elder. So I'm wondering what is their role in that, Dr. Lequay?
Yeah, we have a lot of excellent programs out there, and so the more we have, the better, especially if they could touch any single individual or child and keep them busy and help them to develop their skills and appreciate their own personal value, teach them different things that they could be a good citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, because that is the goal. We want people who are committed Trinidadians and Tobagoans who have a sense of value of self and others, right? As Anna was saying, that is based on certain universal human principles, caring about others, empathy, etc., and not sharing people's breakdown on social media and being, I forgot the term that they use now on social media in terms of the, just...
When things are viral?
Yeah, no, it's not that. There was something else, I can't remember it exactly. But, so we need more integration of these things, because the different pieces in the community, whether it be church or school or non-profit, etc., are all well and good. But if we want to stem the flow, in other words, we need to have some sort of mobilization. We don't want to be doing one step backwards and one step forward and two step backwards, or we don't want, really this snowball of toxic behavior to continue. So and the state is the only one with the resources to do it on a very integrated, massive scale.
I like the fact that you talk about resources. If we were going to take some of the resources, shifted them from
national security,
thank you,
where
would you put them?
Education, community development. We need to build communities. We need to build communities, strengthen the communities.
We have the Children's Authority that is really very struggling. I mean, it is something, I guess, we have come to the point in our history that we need to have our children protected and looked after. But the resources are very, very limited, and there is so much that you can do.
Where does Mariama House fit into this conversation?
Mariama Children's Museum and Teen Turf, 27 years this year. No real funding, but from a very stubborn founder who, anyway, the point is, like, before Carnival, I have a workshop that helps young people to understand that the choices they make now in this season can affect them for the rest of their lives.
Especially when we have primary school children with HIV.
Well, that is the news today, that there are 9-year-olds who have STDs and 7-year-olds, and they were picked up at the QPC, the Queen's Park Counseling Center. And where are we going to be treating with this kind of statistics are fine. We have a lot of statistics over the years.
Well, many times statistics kind of dehumanize people. So you turn the individual into a 1 or 0. And actually, I was having that conversation looking at schools, because buildings on the whole, a little while ago, it seems as though the people in the buildings were the subject and the buildings were the object, as opposed to building boxes that we can put more people in, so we won't be able to make use of natural light and ventilation, but we just shove everyone in there. So basically you institutionalize people, and the people who are in the buildings now become the objects as opposed to being the subjects. But that speaks to an entire kind of paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We need to change our psyche.
I mean, the thing, well, Mariama, we were talking about is I do things that help young people to understand education is about life and how you as a human being understands your place in the scheme of things. Your talents, if you don't know what you are... A lot of young people come and say, Miss, I really don't know what I want to do. 14, 15, 16, they head into CXC. So we have a program that we deal with that. But I guess I had to come out of the system to be able to do that, because I could not have done it. Because as a guidance officer, it was me, one with 1,000 children. Okay? And maybe when I checked, 200 might have been okay. Okay, in inverted commas. So you had about 800, always being called to a meeting outside of the school, always to discuss, and it's still happening. It's still happening.
Out in fires, rather than devoting the resources to building the kinds of human beings, unfortunately nowadays, that we have created over the years, I mean, and this is one of the things that I think we need to be conscious and aware of and deal with. we have created human beings in this society that has brought us to this point, and we need to take responsibility for that and acknowledge that. And that is the first step. How did we get here? What has happened 10, 20, 30 years ago for us to get here and deal with that? And that helps us see the solution in terms of going forward if we want to change the value system.
I mean, you see this? 1979, the institution of the system where children were free for 7 hours unsupervised a day. Oh gosh, that was and nothing in place for these children. You had girls taking, they know their parents out working and wouldn't be home until 8 o'clock in the night. And they're free from 12:30. So they're going home and they're having fun and they're teenagers. So your sexuality is like any little thing will set it off unless you learn to manage it. And you have to have people to help you to manage it. And that's one of the major programs that I have in Mariama, helping young people to manage those raging hormones because it's natural decay.
And we're trying to create a space where we can have more of these conversations, but unfortunately we can't continue. But the last thing I want from you all, though, to cover is we spoke about the season that we are in. Radio stations across the board, Tutbagay, they sound a little different. We say it like that. What are some of the things that happen when people are basically bombarded with carnival music, music that can promote a sort of physical nature and that may help lead to those little bit of mistakes, and those little mistakes being possible to it's almost like snakes and ladders.
We know business,
right? If you slip, you slide.
Well,
we know business.
First and foremost, there's carnival next year. You understand? So we don't need to rush, right? Take your time, enjoy yourself, play yourself, be with friends and family, and look out for yourself and so on. But keep it in perspective, right? There must be boundaries and limits to everything, including having fun.
With all the violence against women, the issue, we think that we're not admonishing men for their behaviors and that they need to educate themselves about the new woman, because there is a new woman. If you want to talk about looking at somehow 30 years ago versus today, there is a new woman and our men. And it's sometimes young men, 24-year-olds, who you think would have been educated in a certain way to understand this new woman that they will be interacting with. They are not. Because I understand the movie town issue. The young man was 24 and she was 28 and wanting to move on. But he, at 24, was born in a time of information, was born in a new world, and has not. They are learning something from the men in their lives.
But actually, I spoke with some people, and they said that in addition to having some of the campaigns that are being held, what is also very important is having campaigns, processes where men experience love. And this is love in a space where tactile stimulation is frowned upon because people don't necessarily know how to treat with it because there are gender stereotypes and there's so many things. But hopefully this sparks and we're able to have so many more conversations. I'm very grateful for the book you gave me, and I'm just calling people from TTAP and trying to talk to people.
Can I just say one thing before we go?
Please.
Love requires something that's very dangerous for most of us, and that's vulnerability. Right? I say no more.
And I mean, we talk about carnival, the music, about wine for me, girl, wine for me, girl. You know what?
What are we teaching?
We are not all. We're not saying the same. We are at a very, very dangerous, or is that the word, time in our history in Trinidad and Tobago. So we all have to be working together. Yes, it's carnival, but we know the domestic violence, we know the issues with our relationship with men and men with women, and we have to be more responsible.
I would like to suggest that you do a show on dominant culture. That's what we're talking about with the gender-based violence and men and power, and it's about dominant cultures. And males, unfortunately, are the dominant gender. And so there are consequences that flow from it when you challenge that.
And even looking at male gaze and what it is we see, what it is we hear. But Lutalamo Simba, Brother Resistance, he says when he did the song Drum and the Bass, he said he refused to put the word waste in the song, so it's not there. It took a little more effort, but he was pleased with the result.
Of course.
And he also talks about having to make a crucial decision. What we're going to play now to end this conversation is something by Brian London. He is going to be in Calypso Fiesta this Saturday, but he's saying he's not giving free publicity, and he's trying to highlight some of the positive, even though we're working we're working with some of the negatives. So Anna Maria Mora, Dr. Keith Lequay, we want to thank you very much, and we want to thank you for tuning in to Talk City 91.1 FM.
Thank you.
Thanks, DK. Thank you.
Yeah, embarrassed Trinidad, no space for you in my calypso. No way. Oh, 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 oh. Well, I decide to take a stand for Trinidad, and I don't know how much Calypsonians who agree with me. But from now on, when you see I singing me Calypso, I ain't giving nobody no undeserved publicity. Cause when Calypso go through the airwaves, it's reaching millions. In addition to the 1.5 we have here. Through the internet, the radio and the TV, we just be connecting with listeners.